Good evening, welcome to a brand new week. It's just gone 7 PM on Monday, the 8th of February, 2021. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme, and this is MesmePolitics. Hello, welcome along, thanks for joining us. You can get in touch at any point in the chat. We are live for the next half hour, bringing you all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. On the way in a bit, the Johnson government's descent into McCarthyism and Rachel Reeves's promise that under a Labour government we will see the largest insourcing programme in public services for a generation. Over in the States, I want to talk to you about the incoming impeachment trial, our incoming coverage of said Senate impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump, the mixed signals from the Biden administration on a variety of policies, and Joe Biden's first full interview as president. In a minute, Green Surge is happening. It's back in the polls. The Green Party is surging to rarely before seen heights. Is it turning into a left-wing equivalent of UKIP in the Starmer era? I also want to talk to you about anti-Semitism and hypocrisy from the Tory party. And I want to talk to you about Jonathan Van Tam and developments on vaccines. But first, here is why royalty shouldn't exist in this country. It's a splash today from David Pegg, Rob Evans, and Michael Barton in The Guardian about a secret procedure used to review laws ranging from Brexit trade deals to inheritance and land policy. So, more than 1,000 laws have been vetted by the Queen or Prince Charles through a secretive procedure before they were applied by the UK's elected members of Parliament, The Guardian has established. The huge number of laws subject to royal vetting cover matters ranging from justice, social security, pensions, race relations and food policy, through to obscure rules on car parking charges and hovercraft. They include draft laws that affected the Queen's personal property, such as her private estates in Balmoral and Sandringham, and potentially anything deemed to affect her personally. The Guardian has compiled a database of at least 1,062 parliamentary bills that have been subject to the Queen's consent, stretching from the beginning of Elizabeth II's reign through to the present day. The database illustrates that the opaque procedure of Queen's consent has been exercised far more extensively than was previously believed. And subject to the Queen and Prince's consent, in the last year, there was an agriculture bill in October, agriculture bill November, fire safety bill November, the European bill December, and another European bill, the European bill in the Lords and the Commons in December. Under the procedure, government ministers privately notify the Queen of clauses in draft parliamentary bills and ask for her consent to debate them. As part of a series investigating the use of the consent procedure, The Guardian has published documents from the National Archives that reveal that the Queen has on occasions used the procedure, and it goes more in depth in this, please read the article if you want to hear about that, used the procedure to privately lobby the government, and it goes into a case study involving I believe it was the Ted Heath administration, followed on by the Wilson government in the 70s, and there was direct liaising in one sense or other of the word. Obviously, it's all alleged. I don't want to be legally culpable for what I say here, but it appears there was some degree of communication, and it's not necessarily illegal. But looking at it from an ethical and a moral standpoint, I don't know about you, I have a problem with it. Royalty shouldn't exist in this country. A monarchy should not exist. We should be a sovereign republic. That much has been clear for a very long time. It's an antiquated relic of an old imperialist era bygone, and good riddance to it. It should go. We now have to win the public over to that, because the public, from nostalgia generally, particularly now we have an ageing population, are pretty on board with the royal family. How that will change when there is a new monarch, whenever Elizabeth II's reign ends, for whatever reason it ends, be it death or be it she steps down, it'll be interesting to see how the polling shifts, because there's a great deal of goodwill in the country for the Queen for her years of service. The immediate task of Republicans in this country would be to remove all non-ceremonial powers from the Queen, completely neuter her political influence and the royal family's political influence, so that they cannot do any of this. Even if they exist, they're much smaller and they can't do any of this. That should be complete common sense reforms the next Labour government should commit to. This does speak to wider issues about the nature of the political establishment in Britain, the contempt for democracy, the elitism. We have the House of Lords, right, fully appointed, and we have this. It is really, really unfortunate and very disappointing. Over to hypocrisy and anti-Semitism. The Conservative Party has deselected a local election candidate for sending an anti-Semitic tweet to a Jewish MP. Sharon Thomason, who was the Tory candidate for a seat on Warrington Borough Council in the forthcoming, now confirmed, May local elections, posted "Keep the Aryan race going" in a tweet to the Labour MP, Charlotte Nichols, on 29th of February last year. In another post last June, Thompson also proposed building a statue of Enoch Powell, the late Conservative MP whose infamous Rivers of Blood speech provoked racial division in 1968. Really sinister. Really sinister. I think something I want to say on this is the hypocrisy of this party to ever take any sort of moral high ground on racism. It's full of people like this. The majority of the Tory membership believe Islam is a threat to the British way of life. This is the tip of the iceberg. The festering pit of anti-Semitism, elitism, and Islamophobia, and all forms of racism in the Tory party is disgraceful. This is a disgraceful display of anti-Semitism. And the party has weaponised racism against Labour. Racism shouldn't be weaponised by any party against another party. There's racism in both the Labour and the Tory parties. But the Tory party is the one that has shamelessly used racism, taken a moral high ground, and beaten the other party with a stick on it. And they deserve to be treated with nothing but the maximum contempt for that. Same goes for the Liberal Democrats, who basically joined ranks with the Tories in order to beat Labour over racism without sorting out their own house. Charlotte Nichols is an excellent MP. She's a socialist MP, excellent MP. And because she's a left-wing Jewish MP, this will not be reported much. And there will not be many front-page splashes on it. There should be. But because she's left-wing, because she's on the Labour left, we won't hear much about this. But she's receiving and because it's a Tory doing the abuse, awful abuse, Charlotte Nichols receives from many corners of the political spectrum, and solidarity with her. And shame on anyone that tries to make this a political issue in the Tory party, because, sort out your own house, basically. That's not whataboutery, that's just pointing out they have zero leg to stand on when it comes to racism, and here's why. Now, Jonathan Van Tam talking about the worrying news about the efficacy of the Oxford AstraZeneca jab on the South African variant. Jonathan Van Tam says it's not a big fright. Have a listen.
AstraZeneca, of course, the UK Oxford University vaccine, is the one that has been in the news most recently. But my feelings about the AstraZeneca vaccine are essentially similar. The South African trial was in young adults and reported mild disease and a reduced level of protection against infection. But that really doesn't change my view that it is still rather likely to have an effect on severe disease.
Jonathan Van Tam, who is the best communicator out of the lot, I would say. He doesn't give you awkward maths professor vibes like Chris Whitty. He's good with the PR. They brought him out for damage management, obviously to calm people down, communicate very clearly to the public. There's not too much to panic about. Things are flying on all cylinders on the vaccine rollout. Good to see. The government will be very happy. The elections are going ahead in May, big elections in May, and their polling has done a U-turn, about turn. The opposition have had a dreadful week. The Tory party is currently firing on all cylinders, and their polling is firing on all cylinders. There's no need to worry about the developments regarding the variant. I think it is an almost certain fact that going forward, we are going to, because of these unfortunate developments, there's no need to panic. It is unfortunate. We're going to have to deal with continual vaccinations seasonally. As Van Tam said, we're also going to have to look at least minor restrictions for a very long time into the future. Not permanently. Maybe a year, maybe more. We will see. Finally, before we go over to the States, a poll from Ipsos Mori puts the Green Party on 8%, taking 3% of the vote off Labour, adding up to 8%. The Green Surge is back. There was a Green Surge in 2014 when Ed Miliband was leader of the Labour Party. Now that Starmer is back, Ed Miliband with another face. Starmer's in, not back. The Green Surge is back. It's healthy to see. My hope for the Green Party is that they can develop themselves into a left-wing version of UKIP. Target certain seats, try and fight those seats, try and win those seats, cooperate with the left of the Labour Party, try and be a pressuring influence on Labour from the left. That's what they need to do. They may not do that. Maybe they've not got what it takes. Maybe they've not got the principles. But that's what we should see. That's what I want to see from the Green Party. And as of right now, I can see why a lot of people on the left would be very tempted to vote with the Green Party in the May elections, if not in the general election, purely because of animosity towards the direction the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is currently taking. More on that later. Over to the States, and yes, that face is back. Donald Trump's legal team argued today on the eve of his impeachment trial that the case is constitutionally flawed and it was absurd to hold the former president responsible for the US Capitol riot. The House of Representatives impeached Trump for a historic second time last month over his role in inciting the deadly storming of Congress by his supporters, and his trial begins tomorrow with the Senate's 100 members sitting as jurors. For only the fourth time ever, an impeached American president is on trial, and two of these trials have involved Trump, a deeply damaged political figure who despite that remains a major force in the Republican Party. Charged with incitement of insurrection, he is likely once again to avoid conviction due to loyal party support in the Senate, but his lawyers contended in their final pre-trial filing that the Constitution does not give the chamber jurisdiction to try a former president, saying the Senate should dismiss these charges and acquit the president because this is clearly not what the framers wanted or what the Constitution intended or allows. Indulging House Democrats' hunger for this political theatre is a danger to our republic, our democracy, and the rights that we hold dear. Obviously talking nonsense, but plenty of people on the American right will find those arguments persuasive. It is sad, it is unfortunate that former President Trump is back in the headlines. We are talking about him on this show. He's back in the headlines. That's unfortunate because it disrupts the process of moving on. At the same time, accountability is absolutely necessary, and this should have acted as a disincentive against someone being another Trump in the future. But what that other Trump, that hypothetical authoritarian, is seeing is Trump getting away with everything, which is really unfortunate and may make things worse. He will be acquitted. Absolutely no doubt about it. The numbers don't lie. We need to stop him standing again. It's unclear. I've heard from one source has said they have to vote to impeach, then they can vote to censor him and basically stop him standing again. The other side, another source, another paper, said that could in theory be done without voting to convict him, if you like. I'm unclear. Maybe you're not. If so, let me know. Because I've heard conflicting tales from conflicting sources in the media. It would be good if a simple majority vote could stop him from standing again. I don't know if it works like that. We'll see. Really mixed signals from the Biden administration at the moment. Some welcome noise from his press secretary, Jen Psaki, here, talking about how he didn't run on a promise to unite the Republican Party.
American ideals. So we still keep the door open to seek ideas to make the package stronger from any Republican or other Democrats who want to bring them forward.
And given the president's remarks earlier and his change of tone, it does seem that he is now okay if this does happen just with Democratic support, despite those hopes and despite his calls for unity.
Well, first of all, the president ran on unifying the country and putting forward ideas that would help address the crises we're facing. He didn't run on a promise to unite the Democratic and Republican Party into one party in Washington. This package has the vast majority of support from the American public. This is something that people want. They want to see it pass. They want these checks to get into communities. They want this funding to go to schools. They want more money for vaccine distribution.
Mixed signals. We've heard some good stuff, some bad stuff. That is the right way to go. You know, reality seems to be kicking in a bit. It is all about active pressure on the Biden administration and pushing them to do good things, right? Pushing them on the things they say they'll do that are good, because otherwise it all slips away. There's a piece in Jacobin saying further means testing of the stimulus will be disastrous for suffering Americans. If Democrats subject the next round of survival checks to more means testing, Americans battered by the economic crisis will find it even more difficult to make ends meet. There's been a big debate about means testing. The problem with it is A, the bureaucracy, but B, and the bureaucracy makes it much harder for the checks to actually get out to people. But at the same time, it's unsolidaristic. It divides and splits up people. And it divides elements of the middle class and the working class around you deserve this, you don't. And it's a whole problem. Some of the talk from some blue dog Democrats would basically position the egalitarian principles of the Biden package to the right of the Trump package. That's not what voters wanted when they voted for wholesale democratic control of government. And Biden needs to stick to the convictions he professes to stand by, but he's never stood by previously in his career, and provide these as an egalitarian proposition, of course. The rest is old austerity logic being repurposed by politicians who have nothing else to moan about and are uncomfortable with actually helping working class people. Another excellent piece in Jacobin saying Joe Biden's steps towards ending Saudi Arabia's war on Yemen are tentatively hopeful, saying yesterday the Biden administration took 2 long overdue steps towards potentially ending the Saudi war on Yemen. But the president has to provide more clarity on what exactly his administration is willing to do to halt Saudi Arabia's brutality and remove the boot from the neck of Yemenis. Let's have a look. Saying in more detail here, most of this suffering has been brought about by a brutal Saudi-led blockade, an air campaign targeting Houthi-controlled northern Yemen, both of which have been made possible by US support. As a result, the United States has been liable in myriad Saudi actions that appear to, at least on their face, meet the very clear definition of a war crime. In this context, any rethinking or diminishment of that US support is a positive thing. Likewise, the appointment of a special envoy signifies a new US push for a diplomatic end to the Yemen war, instead of leaving any diplomatic efforts up to the Saudis, as the Trump administration shamefully did. So the Saudi Arabia shift, which we talked about last week, could actually be good. We've got to take it all with a huge grain of salt, as we do anything that liberals are touting, and as we do anything that's happening in American foreign policy. But there is room to be optimistic here, and it would mean a very clear break from the foreign policy consensus of both the Trump administration and the Obama administration, and it would very clearly improve people's lives and end the probability, or decrease the probability, of them dying brutally in Yemen. And if we're decreasing the likelihood of people dying brutally, for America, that's a pretty good thing. A lot of people die brutally at the hands of America. So it's good to see that. Joe Biden has done his first proper interview since becoming president. Have a listen to some of it here, just a minute-long clip.
President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, can you do something in terms of going to Moderna, going to Pfizer, saying we need more production?
Yes, I think, because we've already done it. But the idea that this can be done and we can get to herd immunity much before the end of this summer is very difficult.
Let's turn to schools.
Sure.
There's some welcome moves on COVID. The Biden administration is still dragging its feet to an extent. They have been handed a mess, but that's no excuse not to try and fix the mess. We will see what happens. On to something really sinister back over in the UK. The government has reportedly ordered an investigation into the extreme fringes on both ends of the political spectrum, with a peer tasked with offering recommendations to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary. The review will be led by John Woodcock, the former Labour MP who now sits in the upper chamber as Lord Wolney, and was appointed as the government's independent advisor on political violence and disruption last November. Announcing the review in an interview with The Telegraph, the unaffiliated peer cautioned that the UK must take notice of the rise of far-right groups in the US following the storming of the Capitol building last month, stressing there was not an equivalence of threat between the far left and the far right. Hang on, and this is the more sinister bit. Telling The Telegraph there had been isolated incidents of some left-wing cases overstepping the mark into, quote, antisocial behaviour, saying there had been a number of, at the moment, isolated examples of climate change activist groups, particularly Extinction Rebellion, overstepping the mark into antisocial behaviour. I think there's been a recognition that even among that movement, they have at times risked undermining their own cause. I'm coming at this with an open mind, with an understanding that there's clearly a potential for groups to develop into increasingly problematic areas. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has previously claimed Extinction Rebellion activists are so-called eco-crusaders turned criminals. And more sinister headlines on this from the Tory party. This is from a Telegraph writer. Attempts by far-left activists to hijack movements among Black Lives Matter and Extinction Rebellion are being investigated by the government. Adding, the way anti-democracy, this is Lord Wolney, the way anti-democracy, anti-capitalist far-left fringe groups in Britain, like the Socialist Workers' Party, tend to have much more success hijacking important causes and mainstream cultural activity than the far right, and the harm they may do. This is really sinister. Labour, of course, suspended John Woodcock over sexual harassment claims and sending inappropriate text messages to a former female aide. John Woodcock should never have been in the Labour Party, clearly, going off of the direction this is going to be going. This is really sinister. The right have historically always been the cancellers, the purveyors of cancel culture. The left and voices on the left of dissent have always been the ones being cancelled. No different here. This is really sinister. All corners of the establishment media are deeply complicit in it, because we've seen, time after time, the establishment media and the liberal media, as well as the right-wing media, parrot those same lines. And this is McCarthyism. This is a really dangerous way to go. Really dangerous, really scary. It's a trope, the talk of left-wing infiltrators. It leans in many cases into anti-Semitism. Historically, that's the left-wing socialist Jews and those sort of tropes of sort of creeping, sinister characters infiltrating groups. It is an anti-Semitic trope. It comes back to the George Soros trope that the far right loves to peddle. And in this case, while not directly that, it is an anti-left, anti-communist ideological trope that is used to stoke up fear and resentment against the left and to basically hunt them out, try and criminalise them. And the end conclusion of this, and how it has been used historically, is basically where leftists, or even social democrats, were treated much as you'd imagine paedophiles would be treated in modern society. Really concerning. I can't overemphasise how concerning that is, and it's something we all need to push back against. Now, a Labour government would launch a radical programme of insourcing to bring public services back under democratic control. The frontbencher Rachel Reeves will say as she accuses Boris Johnson of handing $2 billion of COVID contracts to Conservative cronies, saying this current Tory party is rife with conflicts of interests. It's all about checks and no balances. The government has eroded not only our public services to the brink of collapse, but so much of what it means to be an honourable and transparent government. Have a listen to her speech this morning.
Public services are going to be vital.
Sorry about that. a minor glitch. Here's Rachel Reeves. Where's she gone? There she is.
Public services are going to be vital in rebuilding our society and economy. They will help make Britain the best place to grow up in and to grow old in. Over the years, the Tories have sold off so many of our national assets. Labour wants to rebuild them. The crisis has been an opportunity for friends of the Tory party to profit. There is no respect for public money, which needs to be used for the public good. We are all paying a high price for their mismanagement and for their waste. This current Tory party is rife with conflicts of interest. It's all checks and no balances. People expect all of us seeking government to spend their money with care and with respect. And Labour will. That is why I have set out our alternative vision today. Labour in government will clean up cronyism in contracting through greater transparency, accountability and citizens' rights. After years and years of cuts, we want to mend and redesign public services facing new challenges. By cutting down waste from outsourcing, we can rebuild their foundations to last. Our resilience in our community and our country will be strengthened, not hollowed out. Public services can help us achieve the big missions we share as a country and enhance our everyday lives. Labour is rebuilding confidence and trust. That is the new leadership our country needs.
A really good speech. From Rachel Reeves, of all people, one of the figures who back in the day was pushing Ed Miliband to go further to the left. What we heard today was an indication that Corbyn did really permanently shift ground, or at least temporarily shift ground to the left. That remains. What we're hearing proposed would be a massive breach with the Thatcherite consensus in terms of the undoing of outsourcing, and outsourcing that New Labour was fully signed on to. That's immediate water between Starmer's Labour and Blair's Labour. We always knew it was there, but that is your confirmation. Exactly the sort of thing Labour should be talking about. They're framing it through the language of waste, which I have reservations about, but it will resonate with older voters, and that's clearly what they're going for, and obviously best of luck to them on that. Transparency, good. Big, bold, progressive steps, good. Insourcing, good. Take back control of public services, excellent way to frame it. It's exactly what I've been saying. Labour should be promising to answer the call of take back control. Labour need to sort out their own house in terms of laying people off in the middle of a pandemic before they can really talk about, progressive change in the workplace. But good, hugely positive. We did hear some nonsense over the weekend after a dreadful week for Labour about being unashamedly pro-business. Unclear what that means. After Labour's defeat in 2015, detailed research found 42% of voters thought the party was too soft on big business, compared to 22% who thought it was too hard. The public is not crying out to be soft. The Red Wall isn't crying out for the Labour Party to be soft on big business. They certainly weren't today. They drew battle lines. They called out enemies. So really positive. Really, really positive. Polling shows the pro-business stuff is nonsense, but good. May will be the judge of how this has gone. The May elections will really be the judge of how the Labour Party's doing. They've had a dreadful week. It's looking really bad at the moment, but this was a really good reset. I wouldn't have expected it from Rachel Reeves, of all people. It's a strong rebound after an awful week for the Labour Party. As for pro-business, it's quite easy to be, just say, oh, we're going to be pro-business. It's not so easy to actually lay out what that specifically means. Pro-small business, are you going to talk about rent caps? Rent is the biggest problem affecting small businesses. If you're talking about big business conglomerates, which they almost always are, because they basically worship at the feet of the CBI, then it's pointless. That's not Labour's job. Small businesses, absolutely. Cooperative businesses, absolutely. Social enterprises, absolutely. Just about to go 7:30. That is it for me. I've been Toby Lepati Mesme. Thank you for joining me. I will be back, same time, same place, 7 p.m. tomorrow for Tuesday's edition of MesmePolitics. Between then and now, get in touch on email, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com. Get me on Medium for my daily articles at TobyJoshuaPolitics, or on Twitter for my latest hot takes at TobyJoshuaUK. Thanks for getting involved. This has been all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. I've been Toby Lepetti-Mesme. Brand new week, new coverage on the way of the impeachment trial. There'll be special team radio. There'll be special MesmePolitics coverage on the way of that. And I'll see you soon. More on all that soon.